Welcome to Mary Alice.
What did you do?
We are a Desperate Housewives recap podcast with me, Erin McGee.
And me, Jakub Tansey. Two best friends breaking down each episode until we answer the ultimate question, Mary Alice, what did you do?
Unless, of course, we have finished season 1, in which case, insert new mystery here.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack on Wisteria Lane.
Content warnings can be found in the episode description.
So get comfortable and let's get into this week's episode. Hi, hello.
Hi! How are you? Oh, they can't answer.
I thought you were talking to me, but fine, okay.
Oh no, I could not care less.
Well then, Erin, how have you been?
Thank you so much for asking. I've been good. One of my many side hustles is that I guess the word would be tabulating for Irish dancing competitions. I started doing it as a kind of favour for my sister, but I am now headhunted. I think I'm one of the leading tabulators in Irish dance in Scotland.
For the listeners, and definitely not to remind us what a tabulator is.
I guess that's the word that my sister used because I feel like when I say adjudicator, people think that I have any experience in Irish dancing and I do not. Basically, the judges, they do the little scores on their sheets and they send them to me and then I put them in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet does a magic formula and I pop out the scores.
Incredible. Which character from the show do you think would be standing the best chance to win in an Irish dancing competition?
It is 100% Brie. She is the only person that has the discipline to keep her arms at her sides. Susan would be flailing all over the place.
I know, Susan, 0 points, negative points.
Edie would not follow the costume regulations. And Lynette wouldn't even show up.
She's got better things to do.
She'd maybe be doing my job, like on the business end. Maybe she would do the marketing for me.
Maybe she'd be there, but she would be 20 minutes late and she'd have 4 children in her arms when she arrives. Asking the tabulator to look after them while she dances.
So funny. Just for the people at home, it's illegal to do that. Tabulators have to be left alone. Otherwise, people aren't allowed to talk to me in case they're bribing me. I'm not kidding. This is so serious.
Wow, such a lonely side hustle.
Exactly. And I love it. There should be a documentary about it, like Irish dance mums. But back in the day, it's wild. So back in the day when my sister was being taught Irish dance, both my sisters were taught Irish dance. I was put into musical theatre. It was common practice that you would tie a belt around kids tight to teach them to keep their arms at their sides.
That's insane.
I know. It was a different time, but not
that
different. You can cut all this out if you want.
I loved it. That's staying in, baby girl.
How are you, baby boy?
I went to see Kylie Minogue, and what a lovely time that was. But there is something I do want to talk about, which is actually something that I've wanted to talk about on this pod for a while, but I've been waiting for the right moment in the story for it to bring it up, and it's not really presented itself. But you got a text from someone recently.
Yeah.
So your friend texted you, who is also someone...
Our friend.
Well, yeah, mostly your friend, but I've known her since I was 5. So it's been a minute. Anyway, what was the exact wording they said?
If Jakub defends one more man in this podcast, I swear.
Which really cracked me up. I also didn't realize I was doing that because I do not like the men on this show. But something I was thinking about early on in this whole revisit of the show is, as I've said, I watched this for the first time when I was 15, and it was my first adult show that I watched about adults.
Yeah.
And at that time, all the characters that I'm watching were closer in age to the actual adults in my life.
Yes.
And so, the real adults in my life, my relatives, teachers, parents of friends, etc., that's my only reference points for adults before watching this show. And so I think it was quite natural for me at the time to sort of associate the characters or aspects of them or even specific actions of the characters to real people that I knew.
Yes.
And what I find interesting watching the show back now is that those associations are so strong in my mind because they've been there for so long. And so quite often when a shitty character does something shitty, in my head, I have a much more sort of whole, rounded personality and character for them based on real people.
Yeah.
And it is much easier to defend shitty behavior of people you know or care about. And
100%.
that's what it feels like I'm doing. That's not specific to the men of the show, by the way. But anyway, all that to say, if you hear me defending the men here or anyone on this show, just know that in my personal headcanon, they are more real and nice than what you see in the show. It's interesting because I'm trying to separate that out actively because I want to talk about the show as it's presented. It's really hard not to do that.
No, I think you're bang on in terms of if when you watch a TV show, particularly when you're younger, you're trying to relate to the world and you relate them to other people. But I love that you went in defense of your defense. You said, wait a minute, I have things to talk about. I'm going to defend myself, who is also a man. I also think that you were very balanced and very fair. And similar to the conversation we were having off pod earlier,
Ooh.
I used to be such a pushover. And not in a way of like, oh, I was such a pushover and that was adorable. Like, I regret being such a pushover. Mm-hmm. And now I fear in my adulthood, I have overcorrected in that I am extremely harsh on behavior that I find completely unacceptable. And I am I think I am a forgiving person, but I also feel that equally, if someone is shitty outside, straight out the gate, I will write them off.
Hey, first impressions matter, so that's fair.
First impressions matter. That's so funny, though. I love that.
Oh, make a noise and I'll use it to cover it up.
I love that I love that she came for you and also spelled your name incorrectly despite having known you since you were 5.
That's right. Don't think I didn't notice. And also, on top of everything, in general, I think I'm just a very kind of optimistic person who likes to try and see the best in people.
You definitely are. It's one of my favorite things about you.
So, yeah, I definitely will accidentally fall into that devil's advocate role that you hate so much. I'm
one of those people that doesn't believe that the devil needs legal representation.
And you are so correct for that.
I think he's fine. I think the devil's doing okay.
Well, we know how the devil's doing, so why don't we check in now and see how
the
our gals on the lane are doing. So, this is episode 13, Your Fault. We open with our classic Mary Alice voiceover telling us about a look that parents with well-behaved children will give to parents with not so well-behaved children. A look that says, you should learn to control your kids. And with this, we see Susan getting home and looking over at Lynette in her front yard, yelling at the spawn of Satan to pick up toys and just, behave in general. They catch each other's eyes and Susan gives Lynette this quote-unquote look, which is really shitty after the heart-to-heart they had when Lynette had her breakdown about mothering a few episodes back.
Yeah, she knows that Lynette is a recovering, depressed drug addict.
Anyway, I guess for the comedy, we're doing it. So Susan heads inside, smug in the knowledge that Julie is a straight-ace, perfectly behaved child. However, upon entering, she catches Zach and Julie macking.
I'm so glad Mackin is making a comeback. But I think it's interesting that the little montage of Julie being well behaved, her getting straight A's, helping around the house. I think she's lugging a Christmas tree while Susan has a very light box, and then assisting someone on the side of the road and helping them after Susan has presumably hit them with a bike. Yeah. These are all things where Julie is taking the parent role.
Mm-hmm. And none of us are surprised.
No, but I think it's interesting that even from Susan's perspective, Julie being a good kid, these moments are nothing to do with Susan as a parent. These moments are Julie, just kind of what I said before. Julie is a good kid out of luck.
Yeah. Despite Susan's
Yeah.
My goodness. So Susan freaks out, sending Zach home and trying to tell Julie that she can't see him again. Julie is having none of it. She wants to go to the school dance with Zach, and she won't discuss it with Susan while she's freaking out. So Julie takes out the trash to get away from her mother. Susan follows her out, still yelling, and then catches Lynette's eye again. And Mary Alice voiceover tells us that there's also a look that mothers of not so well-behaved children give to others that says, "Welcome to the club."
Yes. One thing I noted about this, Susan says to Zach about Julie, she's only 14, which I'm seeing as them confirming my theory that they aged Julie up to make it less creepy that her and Zach are together.
Yes. But it's also interesting to me, like, I forget how much these kinds of shows, as they're being produced, are still being written simultaneously, because I imagine they just didn't have this storyline in mind when they made Julie 12 initially. And it is crazy that they're so, it's kind of like us recording the pod. It's like we're only a couple episodes ahead and it's like, we can't take too many days off or we'll like fall behind.
Yes, I think writing is obviously you have the person who has the concept and you have a lead writer sometimes, or you have writers' rooms, and also sometimes different writers for different episodes. So there might be certain writers that have certain ideas that haven't been explored before on the show. And I think sometimes as well, friendships develop in the cast, and you see chemistry there.
Yeah.
And also sometimes, you know, you're 6 episodes in, you're bored, you're going, have Zach and Julie ever been in a scene together? Maybe that would be interesting, you know? So let's get into the Gabby of it all this episode. So we hear about Mary Alice talking about people being in the suburbs and people being having to be responsible adults. We see Paul painting the fence, Carlos with his ankle monitor. And outside, Gabby sees John Rowland's mama come into the door, while Gabby is, for whatever reason, holding a massive jar of peanut butter.
And I wrote that down too. She's just got a spoon and a jar, and it is the biggest, like, value XXL size jar of peanut butter you've ever seen. Gabby's been to Costco this week.
Well, I was thinking about this. 2004. The rules on advertising are different. This is product placement. Oh. It must be. When I'm thinking about all of the stuff like Gabby selling the car and the giant peanut butter, I wouldn't be surprised if someone looked at the camera and was like, Gillette, the best a man can get. So basically, when Helen approaches Gabby, Gabby's really defensive, saying John has been being in touch with her, but she's cut things off. She's been ignoring him. And Helen reveals with John's dad that John is turning down his college scholarship and is instead going to be a gardener full time. Why is that important? Because I find John's dad quite fit.
Erin, we're going to need a rating out of 10 for his arms.
They're criminally unseen. He's wearing a suit jacket, I believe, most of the time.
The main character of Erin's fan fiction.
But if you didn't think I noted Paul's arms while painting that fence...
Different story.
You've never met me. So, John's dad seems a lot more chill with Gabby. And he says, what was nearly my quote of the week... You'll have to forgive my wife. She's still upset over the, and Helen goes, statutory rape thing.
Yeah, that.
Helen and Bob, that's his name, essentially say to Gabby that she has to speak John into going back to college, going back to the scholarship, or Helen will go to the police.
Which, again, I'm still kind of shocked that she hasn't done so thus far. It does sound like... John's dad has sort of talked her down from going to the police or having any like big reactions, which is, yeah, surprising, but we'll get to that. We'll get there.
I think it's probably also, I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself into Helen's shoes a little bit. I wonder if she's like, this now with John going off to college, it's his time to get away from all of this. I don't want to drag him back into police rooms and having to relive this, potentially going to a trial. He just needs to get away from her.
That's fair. I think that's the explanation I needed to make my peace with it in my mind.
You are so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So next scene. So
You're adorable.
Thank you. Gabby turns up to what seems like kind of a frat house that John is currently crashing at.
Which I don't understand because he's meant to have
Dropped out of college, but it looks like a dorm room, but his friends are there. So I'm like, is he crashing at his friends? It's a bit unclear where they're at.
His dad does say the second he turned 18, he moved out. So I wonder if it's just his friends are in college and they've got like an apartment or something and John's also paying for a room. I don't know.
Maybe. It was giving dorm room though. Like the walls of his room looked like a prison cell. In John's room, he tries to console Gabby, having heard about Carlos's legal stuff, and then even tries to initiate sex like he's used to with her, assuming that's why she's there. Gabby thankfully pulls away and reveals that the reason she's really there is to find out what's going on with him, dropping out of college, etc. And we learn that John still has feelings for Gabby and has taken on gardening full-time in order to offer her financial security.
John, the full-time child gardener.
John, the adult gardener, is 18.
John, the full-time adult gardener.
Oh, we'd love to see an adult gardener.
Character growth.
So he's basically trying to take advantage of the fact that Carlos cannot currently provide money for Gabby, believing that that's what was holding them back from being together. And he then takes out a ring and proposes to Gabby, which I didn't remember. And I gotta tell you, my eyes have never been wider.
I didn't remember it either, and I freaked out. For many reasons. For a start, John, the full-time adult gardener, says, Mrs. Solis, will you marry me? He doesn't even call her Gabby, Mrs. Solis. And this scene feels interesting because, foreshadowing for later, in this one, it feels like Gabby has absolutely no intention of being back with John or have any sort of relationship with John. She's genuinely there so that she doesn't get blackmailed by his parents. And there is this sad vibe that John is willing to give up his entire future in order to be with Gabby, and she's horrified by it.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of your actions, Mrs. Solis.
Exactly. And what's really weird, and this shouldn't matter, and again, we're in gross territory, so I'm just going to say it. She doesn't want him now he's an adult.
Oh my God, that did not occur to me.
So, in our next scene, we get back to Gabby and Helen. And Helen has come back to the house and she wants the family heirloom ring back, which means Gabby said yes.
Insane.
Absolutely insane on all counts. Because also, so you said that that John was trying to initiate sex earlier. I don't know if he was. I do think he was initiating a kiss. But, I suppose that doesn't matter too much. But what I will say is, they definitely kissed after she said yes to the proposal. There's no way they hugged it out. Mm-hmm. You don't propose to someone and then be like, okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, he thinks the relationship is back on. He thinks they're engaged.
I wonder if they tried to film the scene where she does say yes and then they were just like, no, this isn't going to work. So we're just not going to show that bit.
Kathy was like, yeah, I said yes, but I was caught off guard. Helen stomps off back to the car and we get Bob, John's hot dad, who is kind of blaming John for his part in all of this, saying that, because Gabby's going, shouldn't you kind of hate me too? And Bob is saying, well, John is equally responsible, as if John weren't a child. Eventually, Bob, very grossly, says that when he was young, he kind of didn't take any risks, but how wonderful it would have been to make at least one mistake like you.
Now, in this man's defense, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, I was expecting you to pop off a lot more at this man.
I'm about to.
Okay, good. I was going to say, are you giving a pass because he's hot?
No. I was simply describing the scene.
Okay, now we're getting into it.
Why is everybody placating this behavior and not one person protecting this child now adult? It is absolutely insane that the dad is basically like, well, you're hot, so I guess it's fine. Not thinking about any of the impact this will have had on John. Also, is Helen, John's mum, the only person that sees that John is a child now adult?
It really does seem that way.
And I don't like that Gabby's doing a kind of oh, shucks, I made a little mistake. What am I like? Aren't I so cute and so darn adorable? It's minging.
Every time we think we're at the end of the John arc, it just comes right back.
It is the horrendous gift that keeps on giving. And the best part, this segues into it really nicely. I will let you talk about the next scene, but in the next voiceover of Gabby, Mary Alice sounds bored of her. She sounds absolutely exhausted by her, and I'm on Mary Alice's side.
Even Brenda Strong was like, oh, okay, we're still on this. Okay, let's get it out of the way. So Gabby returns the engagement ring to John, who is furious and even throws something.
Violent.
Yeah. And initially, Gabby's trying to explain why it wouldn't work for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
That they'd be poor and all the practical reasons it wouldn't work, that love isn't enough, rather than telling him, you know, he is or was a child and she is the villain, and even just apologizing for what she's done to him, which I would have loved to have seen here.
Yes.
And then as she's leaving, John tells her, I love you so, so much. Doesn't that mean anything to you?
Oi.
And he looks unbelievably upset. It's so sad, Erin. And Gabby finally makes a somewhat sensible decision here and just gives him a hard truth. Well, or just a harsh kind of response to kind of like make it clear to him.
Yes.
And like not leave any like potential way back in or whatever, and tells him that he was just a toy to her. Obviously, he's not listening to his parents and stuff.
No.
So Gabby is the only person that he is going to hear this isn't going to work from, that he'll be able to take seriously.
Yes. And I think this scene is very bizarre to me. I still am kind of sitting with it. She's saying, you know, all the reasons that she gives John why they can't be together is nothing to do with his age. Mm-hmm. It's all because of his finances and stability, which is kind of reaffirming why he wanted to drop out of college and start this business. He has accurately clocked her in that Gabby is gonna go where the stability is. None of it is about Carlos, about being in love with Carlos. She says, I've tried poor but happy, implying that she would be happy with John. But the last episode, it seemed like she realized how much she loved Carlos, but this isn't playing into it whatsoever. Then it seems like she's only saying no because of logistics and to
Prevent jail time.
But also the John, you're a toy, a sweet, dumb toy, I think is her doing that classic thing where it's like, I said what they needed to hear to let me go. And she is genuinely upset and cries. What is going on?
It's madness.
It's absolute madness. So we have Lynette trying to get the good one, Parker, who doesn't have cancer, off of the roof via ladder. And she is not doing a very good job. It is heavily implied that Parker does this quite often. The other kids are down on the ground floor, as they should be, when a car pulls up and Rodney comes out. We later hear that he refers to himself as Grandpa, which means, yes, he is Satan's father. Rodney is like, hey, Lynette, my favorite girl, yada, yada, yada. Do you mind if I try and get Parker down? Yeah, no problem. And he basically tells Parker that he is being a girl
Yep.
and should get down, which he promptly does. When Tom says, oh, how did he get Parker down? Lynette says, sexism.
Yeah, it's bad. It is quite funny the way they present it. Like when specifically Lynette's delivery of sexism. Yeah. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah. There's not too much to say about this scene other than the fact that Rodney is probably only 10 years older than Tom.
Something I noted was that Tom's dad and Lynette seemed to have like a nice rapport initially. Like
yes.
He came at the car, they hugged, how are you? So obviously like Lynette isn't going into this episode with a negative opinion of Tom's dad right off the bat.
Yes, and she's saying, how's Allison, who is Tom's mum? And they seem like they have a nice vibe. The kids seem to love him. And it also kind of seems like they are semi-regularly in touch.
Yeah. So later, Lynette is driving Parker home in the middle of the day, who I think forgot to take something with him to
His
school.
little league catcher's mitt.
There we go. Some kind of sports practice or whatever I wrote. I didn't care for the detail. Anyway.
Parker does sports.
Yeah. So when they enter the house, they stumble upon Tom's dad with another woman.
Can I tell you her name? Did you write it down?
Of course they didn't.
Lois McDaniel.
Is that actually? That's such a Desperate Housewives name.
Lois McDaniel, attorney at law. Like it's
I believe it. So clearly they've been at it on the couch, or at least we're about to. The woman is someone that he works with, i.e. not Tom's mum. They're trying to pretend that they were just working. But then Parker enters the room presenting the woman's tights, which he's just found laying around. And it's all very awkward.
Yes, I think it's fun because Lynette is no fool. She knew before this. She saw the messed up hair. She saw the unbuttoned shirt. She was looking at the heels on the floor. She wasn't falling for it anyway, but the pantyhose is the kind of concrete evidence. And Lynette gives the look. And when she runs out, she does say to the woman, "Nice to meet you." And I would like to clock this as a fair count 3.
It's building, baby.
Yeah, we didn't have one for ages, and now we're like 2, 3.
Watch it snowball. We're going to be on like triple digits before you know it.
Triple digits. Oh my God. So we have to be having an affair every single episode. Multiple people.
And you know what?
That could happen. Our next scene, Rodney is trying to sneak to his room with a bagel, but Lynette stops him, kind of like, "Let's talk it out. You can't hide from me forever." Again, kind of hinting that they have quite a close relationship usually. Lynette asks him, "How could you do something like this to Allison?" And he kind of blows it off. He's saying, "I'm always on the road and these things happen and we've been married forever and I'm only married to her because I made this vow to God." And Lynette says an incredible response to this. "So your take on this is you're the victim." I love her. I love her so much. And Rodney basically does not respond to this very well. And the next time we see Rodney, Lynette has kicked him out. He is on the street. His bags are packed. He is sat on the sidewalk with his head in his hands.
It's very comical.
Yes.
We then see Tom coming home, looking out the car, confused as to why his dad is just sitting on the sidewalk with his bags. So he goes in to figure out why Lynette kicked him out. And Lynette makes him a drink. She's really, really nervous to break this news to him that his dad is having an affair. However, Tom is not surprised.
Tom is impressed is the word that Tom uses.
Mm-hmm, we'll get there.
Oh,
Yikes.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Tom.
I think I'm like a pit bull.
I'm going to have to just use a pseudonym for Tom so it doesn't like set you off.
I'm a sleeper agent. I work for the FBI, and Tom Scavo is my code phrase that activates me into my violent persona.
Oh my goodness. So he reveals that his father has been having affairs for years, which he has known about. And Lynette is shocked that Tom is okay with this.
Affairs, plural. Wait. Years, plural.
I'm just looking at my notes.
I'm sorry, I'm just making myself laugh.
No. I really don't want to sit here and defend this man.
No. Jakub, no. You just did a full Barack Obama speech at the beginning of this pod. Do not do it.
But here's the thing.
No. In fact, you know what? I actually don't want to hear the thing.
I'm going to say
I don't care about the thing. The thing is meaningless to me. Yeah.
I really believe that it is not the kids' responsibility to deal with their parents' relationship shit. I don't like Tom's attitude here. He does make a really gross comment about how he's strangely proud of his dad still doing it at this age. And I'm shocked how he doesn't seem remotely upset about it. But at the end of the day, it's not his problem to deal with, and it is not up to Lynette to dictate how Tom handles it.
It is also not up to Tom to dictate how Lynette handles it, because these aren't just people where like you're dating someone for a year. These are part of her family too. Have been for at least, I think 14 years is how long Tom, and it depends. I'm not going to lie. At some point, the writers changed their mind. At one point, they say they met in college. At one point, they say they met at the firm. It's fine. They've been together over a decade.
Sure.
Right? And they are family too. And Lynette feels loyalty to Alison. And Lynette is feeling like her loyalty to Tom is being completely put into question because of this. And I do think that whilst it's not Tom's responsibility to perhaps tell Alison about the affairs, for example, I don't think that's his thing. I think you're right on that. I do think Lynette has the right to say, this behaviour is unacceptable. This type of morals are not what I want around my children, and you are not staying in my house.
Yeah, I'm not questioning Lynette's decision to kick Rodney out the house.
And I don't question her decision to kick Tom out the house.
Which is exactly what happens next.
Eat sidewalk, Tom.
Yeah, so we then get a nice, lovely hard cut to Tom on the sidewalk next to his dad, and it is also very funny.
It's because he says to her, you can't tell me what to do. Next, Lynette and Tom are in bed. She apologises for throwing Tom out the house. I don't think she should. That's neither here nor there. This scene is difficult for me. I'm not going to defend Tom, so don't get excited. However, I will say there is one moment in this dynamic between the two of them that is very me and my partner. And that is Lynette saying, you know what? It's fine. Good night. Turns over. The lights go out. Tom goes, okay, get it off your chest. And immediately she's up. Well, you knew your dad was having an affair and it didn't seem to bother you that much.
Okay.
That's me.
I think you just spoke so aggressively you clipped the mic.
And I'd clip it again. Lynette says the reason that all of this worries her so much it's because how easily Tom is condoning his dad's behavior of having an affair, and how easily he's saying, well, you know, it's kind of almost like he's acting like it's inevitable when they have similar jobs that both involve his dad and him being away for long periods of time.
And then they're going back into sleep mode again, and then Lynette comes back with one final thing to say.
I love it.
I love it. Tom basically says to Lynette in response that he is not his father, which Lynette accepts, but follows up with, and just so we're absolutely clear, I am definitely not your mother, because if you ever betray me, I will leave you. I will take the kids, I will walk out that door, and you will never see any of us again. Glad to get that off my chest. Thank you. I love you. And then goes to sleep. And Tom looks terrified.
Absolutely horrified.
Which makes sense, because now in this final scene of the Lynette arc, we cut to the middle of the night. Tom's dad comes downstairs to find Tom at the table.
Eating cereal.
That's a vibe. I would do that.
That is such a vibe. Cereal at night hits differently.
It does. It does. It feels naughty. So neither Tom nor Rodney could sleep, and Tom's dad apologizes for causing so much trouble, but that's not what Tom has on his mind. Tom confides to his dad that there's something that Lynette doesn't know about, and that he's worried about what would happen if she ever found out.
I don't fully remember what he is referring to here, so I am spitballing a first-time viewer, but a little bit of context. This implies that Tom has had an affair.
Yes.
Is affair count 4 brewing?
Ooh.
Ooh. What I find weird about this as well is it's the first time that Tom looks like he has remorse for something. So it must be bad.
Yeah. I don't know if it's remorse or he's just scared of getting caught.
Facts.
How's that for not defending then?
Very that. Very that. Let's move on to our girl.
Bree! I'm going that.
Bree! You know what that tune was? Hocus Pocus.
Bree! Anyway.
The girls will get it. Oh, have you built your Hocus Pocus Lego set?
No.
You really are just
I don't have any space.
hurting my feelings.
So now we're going to talk about Bree.
Bree! The best part is, for that to make sense, you're going to have to keep it.
So Bree and Rex are... So Bree and Rex! You know what? I'm going to go and pee, actually. I think I need to breathe. I have the giggles now. I need to step away. So Bree and Rex are opposite ends of the dining table with an absolute army of lawyers.
Love.
I think they have like 4 each on either like long side of the table, and they are at the 2 heads of the long table. And Bree is wearing what looks to me like a knitted version of Marge Simpson's Chanel outfit.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
I love it. But that was all I could see was Marge Simpson the whole time.
It is very Chanel. Brie is very Chanel as well. We've seen a few kind of Chanel influenced outfits of hers. The kind of structured blazer skirt combo, the pastel colors, very older fashioned Chanel.
100%. The lawyers are discussing their division of assets until Rex cuts in and gives an impassioned speech to Bree, asking what the hell they're doing and if they should send the vultures home and give it one more shot. And after a short silence while Bree thinks for a moment, she says what might be my quote of the week, which is, I want to keep the club membership. Rex is terrible at tennis.
Which is canon.
Because Rex should have gone to more of those fake tennis lessons from episode 3.
Yes, Jakub, yes. Bree's in the kitchen. I don't think this is where you think I'm going with this, Jakub, but her outfit is, in fact, my outfit of the week.
Is it like a green top and pearls?
It's super dark green, which we don't usually see from her, and like a pink apron and
Return of the Gloves.
Return of the Gloves. Come on. Look, imagine doing my washing up looking that glamorous. Ah, love. So basically, Rex confronts her again, kind of saying, I love you, Bree. Let's work things out. But they've both gone petty. Rex says he is going to use the good china for takeout. And he's taunting her, going, pizza and all sorts will be on it. Then they have a weird moment where the two of them lock eyes. And I guess it's like what Tyra Banks from America's Next Top Model would call smizing, where they're smiling with their eyes and it feels playful. And Rex says to her, isn't divorce fun?
Well, what I find interesting is that as far as I read this scene, Rex interprets their bickering as chemistry, which kind of mirrors Carl and Susan in the previous episode when Carl talked about their constant arguing as talking about it as if it was passion or some kind of spark.
Yes. I do think here it's not as misplaced as Carl, because I do think that Bree is hurt because she is still in love with him. Whereas Susan and Carl's relationship was so toxic for completely different reasons. But Bree is saying what she wants is revenge. Bree says that she wants revenge. And Rex says to her, what, so you want to even the score and you have an affair? And Bree loves the panic in Rex's eyes. Brexit. And basically Rex is going, what, like the weird pharmacy guy? And I can see his point of, oh, good God, Bree, do not sleep with George. But she's fully taunting him. It feels very cat and mouse. And it feels very like, Bree's desperate to have Rex back in my head, but she cannot cope with the betrayal. And she thinks that maybe something like sleeping with someone else will make her feel better, even though we all know it will not.
Yeah, I think I was really excited to get your take on this scene because I really struggled to read Bree in this scene. The whole time she has her classic polite smile pasted over her face, masking all her real emotions. And it just left me wondering, like, was she serious in that it might genuinely level the playing field and set the stage for them to get back together? Was she just toying with him? Does she really want to have an affair just to hurt him or make herself feel better? Maybe. Is she just thinking out loud? I had no idea how to read this scene from Bree's side.
I think that she wants to entertain the idea that she could have an affair to even give Rex a little bit of what that feeling would be like. Because Rex says, I would be devastated if you did that. And I think there's an unspoken implication of, yeah, you would be devastated. Imagine how I am feeling right now. I also think that a lot of their dynamic was that we haven't seen, just based on a scene we've got coming later. The next one, in fact, was rooted in debate. And what is debate if not going back and forth, being snarky with each other, this kind of, I'm taking the good china, well, I'm taking your golf clubs. I wonder if there's part of this dynamic is reminding her of them when they first started.
Interesting.
And that is why she goes to
the diner. So Bree is at a diner late at night when she is approached by George the incel, who 100%...
Stop being funny whenever I take a sip of something. Save your jokes for in between breaths.
I can't help it. So she's approached by George, who, in my head, 100% followed her there.
1,000,000%.
You cannot convince me otherwise. I just picture him sat in his car across the road from their house, waiting there for hours to have an opportunity to interact with Bree.
He fully has a tracker on her car.
Oh, 100%. Very that. Bree is clearly in need of someone to talk to, so she invites George to join her. We then cut to Bree telling George about how she met Rex.
This entire thing is my quote of the week.
Yes, I actually forgot about it. I'm changing my quote of the week to also this. And I simply must quote it directly because it is too funny. She says, "It was my first week in college and I went to a meeting of the Young Republicans where Rex gave a speech. And I went up to him afterwards and introduced myself and told him that I agreed with his stance on the death penalty. He took me out to dinner and we stayed up till 2 a.m. talking about big government." Big government had me on the floor. I was crying, Erin. So she says,
"This episode was brought to you by big government."
Sponsor? No, don't sponsor us. We're not being sponsored by big government.
Absolutely not. I mean, we don't have a lot of lines, but that's the line.
Yeah. So we stayed up till 2 a.m. talking about big government, gun control, and illegal immigration.
The last one made me stop laughing. I was giggling the whole way through it and then abruptly stopped. Went,
well, it killed your moment, but for Bree, she then finishes with, it was just such a magical night. Mm-hmm. I found it interesting that she hesitates slightly before saying what kind of meeting she met Rex at.
Yes.
Just interesting.
I think that it's interesting as well that she has, I've kind of just said this, but you know, to make it full circle, she met Rex and then they went to a diner. And she has returned to a diner after just being with Rex. She's kind of returning to the scene of the crime, you know?
I love that.
She is asking for George's advice. And to be fair, she then does stop herself and go, "Do you know what, actually, George, I realize that that's not fair. You have romantic feelings for me. This isn't good." But he says, no, we can have this conversation. And at one point, Bree says about her and Rex, "I know we're supposed to be together." She does hesitate with George about the Young Republicans, but I didn't see it as her being ashamed of being Republican at all, actually. I saw it as her...
hesitating about how much to share with George. Maybe.
I was hesitating about how much to share on the pod. So I think that when you are in love, you have certain stories that are with your partner about how you guys got together, really early memories, or any memories really, that feel really sacred and yours. And almost in the act of telling them, they become less special in some ways. Not that that makes them any less special, but other people don't need to hear it and go, "Oh, that's so nice," for you to feel that. And it feels like you're kind of... sharing a piece of your partner or a piece of your history with them that you might feel super protective over.
Yeah, it's like a private memory.
Erin discovers privacy. As someone who...
And that's maybe the episode title.
Erin discovers privacy. Do you know what? You might be so right with that because I tell everybody everything.
You heard it here first, folks. Do not tell Erin your secrets.
I'm like, you know that feeling when... you want to keep something to yourself? Like maybe you don't want to call your mom about it, or I don't know where we are in the scene.
Okay, so after Bree confides in George that even after the betrayal, she knows they're meant to be together. She says, you know, it's difficult to reconcile given the trust issues she has now. And George then pretends, and I want to stress pretends,
Yes.
to be her friend in this moment.
Yes.
Comforting her and offering advice when she asks, saying, if I could get a good person to love me, I would find a way to forgive them.
It's one of those lines that feels like if another character said it, it would be beautiful. But everything about George is, I can't get anyone to love me. And, I just wish good, nice, sweet girls would give me a chance because I'm this nice, sweet guy. And it is just very
He's going for pity at all times, and I can't stand it.
And suspicious George is suspicious.
Yes, because then Bree thanks him, telling him that he deserves a special woman, and then George smiles and agrees, and the camera pans down to reveal his hand under the table, forming a tight fist along with an ominous turn in the music.
And we kind of got a hint of this when he entered the diner, because there's a weird bit where he shifts the cutlery on another table. It's like the cutlery in the napkin. He kind of, and I don't know what that is, because at first I thought, is he fixing it? And it's kind of like an obsessive compulsive type of behavior. But it does feel like he's just, And I'm wondering if it's a hint that he's quite impulsive.
I mean, he's got a lot of problems. We'll get to it over the course of the season.
But a bitch ain't one. Am I right?
I would argue that's his number one problem. In his mind.
Bree. The next scene. Bree has come home and is sneaking back in because Rex is on the sofa bed, presumably asleep. Plot twist, no he's not. He is wide awake and he checks the clock next to him to see that she has been out till 2 a.m. And Rex clearly thinks that she has been out adult relationshiping.
Yes. And funnily enough, that mirrors the story that Bree said, staying in the diner till 2 a.m.
Yes.
with Rex.
Which I actually wonder if this is also a kind of thing which Erin is definitely reading too much into. Do you know the thing about like emotional affairs versus physical affairs? That I wonder if almost for Rex, what would be the worst betrayal? That she had this beautiful connection with someone where she could stay up talking to them until 2 a.m. or whether she had slept with them.
Yeah, interesting. Well, either way, Rex is not going to let it slide, because in the next scene, Rex approaches George the incel for his prescription.
What I loved about this scene is I genuinely made a comment about this maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago.
Yes, I have this noted down.
And I genuinely didn't know this came back.
Yes.
And I was like, ooh.
Do you want to do the scene?
No.
Okay. So, Rex is at the pharmacy claiming he wants his prescription, but mostly just to snoop and find out if anything's going on with him and Bree and to dissuade George from going any further with it. George assures Rex that they're just friends, and Rex proceeds to try and intimidate George anyway, saying that a classy woman like Bree ends up with doctors, not pharmacists. So you absolutely clocked this professional power dynamic a few episodes ago.
It also is very much feeding into George's feelings of inferiority.
Yes.
He's clearly a very insecure man, and this is not a thing about the actors playing Rex and George at all, but very much in the way that they're styled and how they walk and their confidence. It's very clear that Rex is seen as a generally more attractive man, whereas George is somewhat invisible. Everything about his choices make him kind of the guy you don't notice.
Yes. I've also just realized that George and me have the same angry face.
For the people at home.
I'm going to cut that.
I know. For the people at home, Jakub today was very, very angry. And I could tell that he was very angry because he was smiling. And Jakub has a very close-lipped smile that he does. And everyone around him thinks that he's having a delightful time. But I know he is ready to eviscerate. But George is weird.
Yeah. So we then see from George's POV as he does find the prescription Rex is after, but he lies and tells Rex he can't find it and will have to have it delivered. Then once Rex leaves, George opens and empties the bottle of pills in his prescription, thinks for a moment, and walks into the aisles of various medications at the back, clearly implying that he's going to tamper with Rex's heart medication. Also, a small detail I noticed, when George throws away Rex's meds, he looks up and the lighting on his face is red. I guess from like a neon pharmacy sign or something, but it's red because that man is the devil.
And also that idea of when you're so angry, you start to see red.
Yes. Oh my God. It was, very appropriate. So yeah, this is a baddie.
And now a sister. Well done.
All right, time for Susan.
Susan. If you might remember from the first scene of this episode, Susan has decided to go to Paul to speak to him about the relationship that is brewing between Zach and Julie. Paul has taken a lesson from Danielle Vandekamp because he is so unbothered. Paul is saying, this is fine. I have sold the house and we are moving at the end of the month, where Zach appears from nowhere and pops out angry that the house was sold behind his back, saying that Paul promised that wouldn't be the case. Paul is suddenly like, did you take your meds today?
Yeah. And which I wrote, he definitely drugged those mashed potatoes a few episodes ago.
Yeah, for sure. And then I also thought that it had very, Harry, did you put your name in that goblet of fire? Vibes.
Yes.
Eventually, the two forget that Susan is there, start arguing with each other until ultimately Zach says about Mary Alice, I wish she'd shot you instead.
Wow.
Which I do not agree with. Mainly because Paul Young, What Did You Do? Does not have the same ring to it. Then Susan says, we're all going to miss you.
Yeah, it's like the awkwardness and they look at her as if like, oh yeah, Susan's here. So you're moving.
We already know that the housewives were not keen on Paul to begin with anyway, but I do imagine that now they are very much the evil darkness of the lane, which is so sad because I do think that when people are grieving, a lot of the time people show up in the initial stages, but slowly but surely they can't cope with the fact that this person has this kind of sadness around them. And that's when actually people need them the most.
Yeah. Do you think that Paul is low-key proud of Zach for, I don't know, meeting a nice girl? Because he's got like this grin on his face and he's kind of laughing about it. Like, you've said unbothered, but I was like, is he kind of like, oh, go son?
I wonder if, it's kind of reminding him, I think in some ways it's always going to remind him of meeting Mary Alice probably. Yeah. And also, we know from the lane that Julie is a nice, sweet girl. This is probably what he wants for her. And it's probably a sign to Paul that Zach isn't as messed up as he's worried that he is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then we get another scene which couldn't possibly take place in 2025 post-landlines.
Baby.
So Susan is making some tea at night when the phone rings. Julie calls from upstairs that she's got it. But Susan picks up the phone from downstairs anyway in order to eavesdrop.
Can I speak a little bit about this?
You can.
So, I remember very vividly, round about the age of 10 or 11, doing this specifically and picking up the other landline to listen into conversations with my friend. Yes, this is your real name, Lauren. You're never listening to this podcast. And we used to, it was her grandma's house, pick up the phone and listen. And it was always just like, hi, Beatrice, how are you? Whatever. But we were so like giggling, covering our mouths because we were doing something so bad. And I went, oh, I really kind of wasn't that type of kid in general. So I must have learned this from Lauren. And then I went, wait a minute. What if I learned it from Desperate Housewives?
Wow, a bad influence on kids. It's got that 15 rating for a reason.
Me being young, watching some of the horrific things, fine. Me being young, watching I saw potential. A busybody like myself, somebody who doesn't mind their business. I said, I can just listen in on people's conversations like that. What do you mean?
Really, you were thriving. So Zach is calling to make sure that Julie won't tell her mum about what happened to Dana, specifically those words.
Yes.
So Susan is in the know that Julie now knows something about Dana. But before they get any further, Susan's kettle starts to whistle. So she hangs up before Julie and Zach realize she's on the line. Americans and their tea making is that I could make a whole podcast about that, let me tell you.
Bonus episode. Also, much like Mike, Susan cannot spy, cannot be an investigator to save her life. But
Not in this scene, but
later on,
she's gonna work.
Also, where is Mike? The last time we saw him, he was being questioned by the police about Martha Hooper, and now nobody's paying any attention to anything to do with Mike in this episode. Next, we have Julie getting ready for the dance. Something I want to say is I love how age appropriate Julie's entire wardrobe is.
Yes, it was so very Julie.
Mm-hmm. In her cute little pink cardigan, she's putting on earrings, and Susan's going, you know you can tell me anything, right? And Julie's going, yeah. Julie just wants to boogie in her cute little cardigan and early 2000s outfit and hang out with the boy that she likes. I remember getting ready for school dances when I was younger, and they were such a big deal because I was allowed to wear makeup and clothes that were not our allocated school uniform. I remember for my primary 7 disco wearing like a borderline Lynette outfit. But I loved it. So it was like sharp collar but short sleeved, and it was white, and it had pink roses embroidered on it, and white trousers, which I remember were definitely transparent under the disco lights.
Well, speaking of transparent, Julie says to Susan that she's being so transparent for offering to chaperone the disco.
Yes. Also, I love your segue so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she clearly is just going to keep an eye on her and Zach. But in the next scene, Zach is getting ready for the dance with Paul's help. And Paul is trying to get out of Zach anything that he might have told Julie. And Zach basically comes clean to Paul about what he'd told her about.
Oh, this whole scene's so creepy, yes.
Yeah, about seeing blood and Mary Alice screaming and Dana, and that he remembers killing Dana. And I think Zach is using this opportunity where Paul wants to actually hear what he has to say for once to bring all of this up, because prior to this, anytime he's tried to talk about it, he's been shut right down.
He also says, you know, I've been trying to tell you about this.
Quite literally.
And it's a very coming of age moment and quite tender initially that Paul is doing Zach's tie. That is very much the male equivalent of like passing the torch. It's a very known fatherly symbol.
Yes.
But it's also super ominous because we know that strangling is Paul Young's murder weapon of choice.
And the camera is zooming in the whole time slowly on Paul's hands around this boy's neck with the tie and him tightening the tie. And it is terrifying after, you know, the strangling of it all and the imagery of him choking the Mary Alice on the videotape and stuff and all that, which you've covered. But yeah, basically Paul at the end wants Zach to start from the beginning, to tell him everything in order to find out what Julie and, by extension, Susan might know at this point.
And I want to say as well that it isn't until Zach says, I remember killing Dana, that Paul freezes. His hands completely freeze.
Yeah.
Next, we have the dance, and Zach got Julie a corsage, and it's adorable. And he's kind of saying, oh, it isn't that type of dance. I feel kind of dumb. And, you know, it'll make you stand out. And Julie says that she has no problem standing out and puts it on.
It's so cute.
And we see Susan staring from the punch bowl next to Bree, and we see Paul staring at them too. Paul wasn't supposed to be there, but Bree reveals that he volunteered just a couple of hours prior, and she's sidestepping off beat at the dance whilst at the punch bowl, and it's so...
I was worried you weren't going to mention that, because that's my favorite visual of the whole show, is Bree having the time of her life bopping along to the music. Not a care in the world. She's thriving. She's in her element.
I think she has wine in a hip flask. For sure. She's just vibing. She loves a boogie. And also we know that when they're filming these type of things, there's no real music playing. So somebody did her dirty by having a music thing that would make Brie offbeat.
Maybe she wouldn't be good at the Irish dancing.
You're so right. Do we think that Julie, the Vampire Slayer, is about to have her prom queen moment, or she's going to be announced as the protector of Wisteria Lane?
Class protector. Well, if it happens off camera.
We have said now on Julie the Vampire Slayer that the new big bad is actually Paul Young. So all of this is really tracking that theory in my opinion.
Yeah. And we now see Susan being approached by Paul, who asks her for a dance. And in this scene, Susan does more detective work than Mike could ever dream of.
Yes. So Susan employs a great strategy by pretending that she already knows everything.
So Paul then proceeds to confirm the same story that Zach has now confided in Paul about him killing his baby sister, etc. And that Paul and Mary Alice covered it up. And then he asks Susan for discretion in this family matter. And Susan says sure, but is in a bit of a daze actually hearing this, well, for the first time, and is looking over at Zach and Julie having a nice time and is presumably now very concerned for her daughter.
I love this scene because you said Susan is doing great investigative work. However, Paul is actually the one that's playing Susan here.
Yeah.
Susan thinks she's being so clever by pretending she knows something, whereas Paul knows exactly what she knows and he knows exactly how to manipulate her. So he says it was an accident. He was practically a baby himself. He then says him and Mary Alice weren't in the room. They just heard the baby, Dana, screaming. And by the time they got to the crib, it was too late. Then, okay, so I love this entire arc. I love Paul in this arc. This is kind of something that you've said before, which is this show goes, here are the answers. And then it always pulls a, just kidding.
Yep.
So Paul and Zach are in the car. Zach gets in and Paul says he's essentially taking care of Susan and he doesn't have to worry anymore. Paul then admits, and I quote here, "These things you think you remember, they're not true. You didn't kill anyone. Dana is very much alive."
That is the biggest question mark for people who don't know where this is going.
Wild. So now we know that Paul is willing to have Zach look like a child murderer. Zach the child murderer. Rather than reveal what's actually been going on. I love this as a twist. I love it. I love it.
Although he's willing for other people to think that, he is at least cares about Zach enough to not want him to think that himself.
Yes.
However, I did also note down that although this does feel like a very classic Desperate Housewives subversion tactics, we also, I know where this is going, but for people watching for the first time, suspicious Paul Young is always been very suspicious. And we know that he's down to lie and he's down to manipulate Zach. So I think if you're watching this for the first time and you've had the rug pulled out from under you so many times, it's like, so is Paul telling the truth now or was Zach correct? And there's just so much doubt over the whole situation.
So what is the truth?
Exactly.
But also, the crucial piece of information from our first time viewers and friends is that Martha Hooper is confirmed at this point, if we're to take Paul at his word, to have been wrong. Because she says about what she did to that baby, presumably saying that Mary Alice killed Dana. We know that Dana is alive now.
Yeah. So what did Mary Alice do?
Mary Alice, what did you do?
Truly the question of the hour.
Truly the question of the pod.
Yes.
You're right. You know what? Paul Young, what did you do?
Just doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, dang. Paul, what did you do?
So we then see Paul and Zach arriving back home and getting out of the car. Clearly has dropped the lore off camera to Zach and is asking if he's okay. Paul says he's told him all of this because he couldn't have Zach thinking he killed someone. But Zach thinks that Paul only told him so that he wouldn't be running around telling people these false memories.
What is your take on this? Because I 100% believe Paul. I think in the acting performance alone, when he's saying, "I didn't want you to think that you were a killer," there are tears in the man's eyes, and I believe him.
Zach says that he will keep the lore a secret, but that they are not moving, as he intends to keep dating Julian. It's very much a statement, not a question or a suggestion.
Yes.
And Paul says it's out of the question, but Zach disagrees and very much emphasizes dad. And
Dad.
Just before he heads inside, Zach flashes a truly villainous little grin that is honestly low-key scary. He kind of seems like a bit of a different person in this scene. He's got so much more confidence. And I noticed that Zach's tie has also become very loose.
Yes, it has.
Which in this moment, I think emphasizes that Paul has now kind of lost his grip on Zach.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like Zach was so subservient to Paul and others out of guilt. But now he's been like freed from that, knowing he didn't kill anyone, and is fully ready to swing in the other direction now.
Yes. And also in this scene, directorially, as Zach is saying that they're not moving anywhere, he has stepped up higher onto the steps into the house. He's literally standing over Paul to show that in the power dynamic, he's now higher than him. It's over Paul. He has the high ground.
Yes! Love a Star Wars reference.
I knew you would like that. That one was just for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. And yeah, there's definitely something as an audience member of hearing the way Zach says, Dad.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Then we have Zach comes to Susan's front door to tell Julie the good news that he is staying on the lane. But Julie the vampire slayer is showering.
All the graveyard dirt needs washed off from her patrolling.
Exactly. I feel like she just has a lot of product in her hair from the school dance that she's trying to get out.
Fair.
So Zach is wearing a very un-Zach outfit for the first time.
He's wearing a very Freddy Krueger vampire.
Okay, so I need to show you my dress. I need to show you my notes. Is Zach dressed like Freddy? What's his puss from that Elm Street movie?
Yes, he is.
Which I think is showing that one, he is dangerous again, but also two, it's the first time he's not dressed like Paul, which suggests to me that Paul is losing his ability to manipulate Zach.
Yes. I'm so glad we're on the same page.
I'm so glad that I got the movie right. Then we hear Susan says about Julie. Julie is only 14 years old again, which is very significant because she seems to remember Julie's age and not John Rowland's. So the main point of this scene is that Susan is suggesting slowing things down and not seeing Julie for a while. But Zach says no.
He's very cocky and arrogant suddenly. It is literally like we're being introduced to a new character.
He spins a piece of furniture. And I will say that I am on Susan's side here immediately.
Oh, yeah.
When she shows a parenting hand and says, you know, you've actually made this really easy for me. You're no longer allowed in my house. Zach drops the corsage, which is all ruined now that he gave Julie, and Susan closes the door. Something I want to discuss about what is seen as Zach's perceived change in attitude is Paul asks Zach if he took his meds. Zach, in previous episodes, was diagnosed by the doctor with bipolar disorder. And I wonder if part of this is that he has not taken his medication and caused some sort of episode within himself. Now, again, I am not excusing any violent behavior from Zach, but I wonder if that is a hint as to what's going on. And also, people with bipolar disorder can sometimes pick a favorite person that they become obsessed with to fixate on. And I wonder if that is what's happening with Julie.
I don't think they ever specifically dive into that side of it, like the psychology and the meds and stuff again, but that tracks so hard.
But actually, I need to backtrack because Zach doesn't have bipolar disorder. He has borderline personality disorder, but I said bipolar. But everything that I said
stands.
It's people with borderline personality disorder that have a tendency to have a favorite person. Yes.
Yeah. Also, I think your description of Zach spins a piece of furniture does not emphasize enough how much of a violent outburst it was.
Oh, you're right. I'm sounding like it's an office chair.
Yeah,
and
he's
just
like,
going, wee.
Like he loses it.
Yeah.
Susan has to literally take a step back to avoid being hit by this little cabinet thing.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Oh.
So.
Are we at the... Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're at the end already.
This has flown by.
This has been a good episode.
For whom?
Us.
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's been fun.
it's her. No, yeah. I've had a hoot. I was going to say it's been horrible for literally every character. No one.
Julie's had a nice time.
Not for long.
Yeah, but in this episode. Anyway.
No, not even then.
So in our closing scene, we get our Mary Alice voiceover telling us that eventually we all have to become responsible adults.
Womp womp.
Yeah, truly. Giving up what we want to do in order to do the right thing. And this is paired with shots of John and Gabby.
Implying that what Gabby wants to do is to be with John. Yes. But choosing to do what is right is staying with Carlos, which again feels like a complete 180 to me.
She tells us that a lifetime of responsibility can be difficult and that over the years it can be too heavy a burden for some to bear, which is paired with Bree giving Rex his medication and Tom's dad saying bye to Tom and Lynette as he leaves. And finally, she tells us that we still try to do what is best, not just for us, but also for those we love. And we see Susan walk past Julie's room, knocking on her door, only for the audience to see inside her room, showing an open window that she's clearly snuck out of.
Did you ever sneak out, Jakub?
I didn't, but my brother continuously did, and it was so obvious to everyone.
Does, and I'm like, those are grown men, Jakub.
No, one of them used to sneak out the window all the time because we were on the ground floors.
Yeah,
it's real easy to do. Whereas Julie had to climb down.
I didn't sneak out either. I was way too afraid and uncoordinated.
So then we see Julie and Zach meet up at the high school dance venue, wondering what they'll do now that Susan has forbidden them to hang out. They're not sure, but they say they'll figure it out and hug. And isolated, this is very sweet, but now I'm less sympathetic to Zach, and his vibe is turning more sinister. So I'm like, it's kind of sweet, but also I know it's not gonna be sweet.
It's sweet, but it's complicated. What I find so interesting is that Mary Alice's voiceover is that the time comes where you have to be a responsible adult. And she says, nobody knows this better than the young.
Yes.
Which I think has a double meaning.
Yes, I wrote the exact same thing because, well, I think it's pretty obvious, but just to be extra clear, the young as in the children and the young as in the youngs.
Yes.
The young family.
Which at this point could also mean Dana.
Yes. But I also wrote that I disagree because I think that kids in general truly think they'll be living a carefree life forever when you're a teenager. I'm like, no one knows this better than the young. What do you mean? The young think they're going to be like partying forever.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's the fact that we're seeing Julie and Zach, and I think these two in particular.
True. Also, this was another closing sentence that started with, yes, sooner or later. Da, 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 da.
This is our second yes. We have had a yes. But not a yes. Just yes. And that was, I believe, in the episode with the gardening lawn and the gnome and Martha Hooper. But this is us starting to really get the iconic Mary Alice yes.
Yeah, so get used to it, baby.
I'm very excited for it because I was like, did I make this up?
Yes.
Yes.
I think my worst neighbor and monster of the week are very predictable.
Go ahead.
Worst neighbor, Zach, and monster of the week, George.
My worst neighbor is George, and my monster of the week is George.
Okay.
Neighbor, because he is following people that live in the lane, aka he is stalking Bree. And monster of the week, because he's a monster.
Yeah.
However, Tom Scavo is always there in the background as a monster of the week.
He's a lurkin.
He's a low-level
monster.
monster.
Not a monster of the week. He's a series regular. He's like the Spike in the seasons where he's more of like a Team Rocket style villain coming in consistently.
Yeah, he's the D&D lower level demon. He's like a mimic, and he's just a chest that turns out to be a man, but he's a child who turns out to be a man. Man-child.
I think I'm sticking with Zach as worst neighbor because I think he'll take stalking over violent outbursts in my house.
That's fair, but I've been stalked, and let me tell you, it is incredibly inconvenient. That was episode 13. The next episode that we're going to be recording we have coined already as the hangover episode.
I'm going to be back on another triple shot coffee.
Yes, you are. They're going to be like, I'm just looking out for you, man. We are going out for Pride. And then the next day, Jakub has already planned to come to mine to eat hot kung fu, not sponsored, and watch the newer Snow White film.
Which I know is going to be dreadful, but I cannot wait.
What is your hangover cure? Do you have one?
Shower and fresh air is the main thing, to be honest. I simply can't function until I do that. It's hard to convince yourself to do it. I'm always the better for it.
Mine is a cup of tea. Because I feel like a cup of tea cures absolutely anything.
Well, after your tea next week, we'll see how you feel.
Yep. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
And until then...
Please, we beg of you, always stay desperate.
Keeping me on the edge of my seat that time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to check out our Instagram for visuals, behind the scenes content, and more.
You can find us by searching for Modded, that's MEWDYD.
Or just search for Mary Alice, What Did You Do?
This podcast is brought to you entirely by us, Erin McGee
and Jakub Tanzi. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to leave us a review. It really helps us out.
Join us next time for another episode of Mary Alice,
What Did You Do?